Hello, I'm Michael Chigani, and this is Straight Talk. With me today is Tommy Cheung. Tommy Cheung, you're chairman of the Liberal Party. You're also an executive and legislative councillor. Now, and you represent the catering sector in LegCo. You are a very controversial figure. You always have been. You always speak your mind. Now, so before we start, I want to show you something, because the government has relaxed certain restrictions, and bars have reopened, but with certain restrictions. Let's have a look at what you yourself said.
I can only tell you, 20 years ago when I have curfew on my daughter, 20 years ago, and I said you have to be home at 12 o'clock. She complained that they just get started at 12. How can you make me come home at 12?
Now, that was 20 years ago, so I guess your children are now, your kids are now grown up. So what you're saying is bars actually start to get lively at 12 o'clock, right? I suppose you don't restrict your children anymore because they're grown up, right? So they can go out whenever they want. But I know that you want actually to have bars open from 6 p.m. in the evening to 6 a.m. in the morning. That's 12 hours, right? Now, the government has been relaxing rules gradually. They do that every week. They relax rules gradually. But 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., is that doable?
I would think so, yes. One, not a lot of people will be out on the streets. So you don't have to really be worried about social distancing from midnight to 6 in the morning, because not a lot of people are out there, except if you go to bars or the Chinese nightclubs or the karaokes. See, what happened when we talk about 6 to 6 is, I have gone through with my whole constituencies, from restaurants, bars, nightclubs, and karaokes. Basically, the difference is we're talking about survival, okay? My whole trade can survive on 1.5 meters apart, doing half the capacity, okay? Plus, we want to do a few more good practices in to bring the risk down. And for restaurateurs, 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. or 12 p.m., 12 a.m., 18 hours, we can survive doing half the capacity, but 4 to a table. Same thing with my bars, karaokes, and nightclubs. They're talking about if you let them open 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. They may not be open for that long, but it's hard to say this is doing this, this is doing that. So allowing the 12-hour operations or operating hours, seating 4, even with bar, nightclubs, and karaokes, they could also survive. So basically, we're talking to the government over the months to talk about we have to live with COVID-19. And to live with it, you can't just shut us down quickly and then open up.
Do you want the whole
gradually.
thing to open up again completely with no restrictions?
Well,
is that the only way that they can survive?
Yeah, not without restrictions. We're going.
You support restrictions?
Yeah, with that, restriction. 4 to a table, half the capacity, 1.5 meters wide for social distancing. We take temperature. We have alcohol.
Wash, yeah.
And we do a few other things. We're separating servicing staff, the cleaners for those delivering food. We're going to boil all your utensils before you eat. We're going to try to do e-money so that we don't use cash. And we're limiting, that's a trick to this whole thing, we're limiting customers staying only for 2 hours. Okay, so you don't have to worry about you and me eating and drinking.
But if the customers stay here for 2 hours, the customer goes out, goes to another bar, you cannot stop them from doing that, right? For another 2 hours.
You're not trying to stop people from going out, okay? Otherwise, you would just lock out the whole town. But basically for us, okay, the worst thing I think that government officials worried about is that you and I go to a place, eat and drink for 2 hours, but sit for another 3, makes 5 hours, and chat without our face masks on. That's where they think the problem would be, because you take your mask and then you talk. But if we limit, obviously, we tell our customers when you eat and drink, of course you take your mask off, but if you don't, please put your mask back on. But if we limit eating and drinking to 2 hours, okay, then it will shorten the time that they will be sitting there talking.
So now the thing is, you have proposed all these things, Mr. Cheung, and some people have, because you're a member of the Executive Council, right? Some people have criticized you, including the former head of the Hong Kong Observatory actually wrote a letter to the chief executive accusing you of caring more about profits than public health. How do you respond to that?
Well,
you want the bars to open, like you just said, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and you say you would rather have them all open up even with more restrictions. Some people say that you don't care about public health.
I could say that would be a lot of BS, okay? Without public health, Hong Kong, I mean, if we have COVID-19, like in the US or like in India, we're dead. But I've always been advocating, and I think any responsible government should balance containing the virus with the economy. It is not an easy way of doing it. If you listen to all these, I said, so-called specialists, they are specialists in the field of containing virus. But if you listen to them, they will shut out the town indefinitely, okay? Probably until the vaccines come out. But basically, that's why it's not done in the rest of the world, because you cannot do that. You have to balance economy with the containing the virus. So basically, what I'm trying to do is to seek out the best practices that the restaurant trade can do to minimize risk, and keep reminding the government when they talk about reducing risk, risk can be calculated. If you tell me you're reducing 1 million percent, okay, or 100,000%, or 1%, it's a different range.
So you say we have to accept some risk, right? You talked
Yes.
about the economy. The Liberal Party is a pro-business party. Now, aside from the catering sector that you are involved in, the entire Hong Kong economy is suffering, right?
Yes.
How would you, yourself a businessman, fix that? I mean, it's not possible now to fix that with the virus.
I think as long as we calculate really precisely the risk, then we know what we can do and how much risk is involved in increasing the risk, and what can we do to decrease the risk on actual, best practice behavior. So I think this is very, very fine. You need to fine tune it, and unless you know what the figures are.
Do we link our economy closer to the mainland economy? Is that the only way out for Hong Kong? We will lose our international status that way.
I don't think so, okay? But whether we link closely to the mainland,
or Greater Bay Area,
or the Greater Bay Area, or even to the rest of the world, that's what we've been doing. But it's not something we can call out the shots nowadays, because we've been shut out by the mainland Chinese. They're worried about us going in,
right?
okay? Not us worried about them coming out. They have done their part in the last 6-7 months, with flying colors. Unfortunately, we are not.
But we cannot follow those rules because they have a different system. They can lock down the city. We cannot do that.
We cannot follow those rules, and I'm not saying we should. All I'm saying is, what can we do? I'm not even looking globally. What can we do to entice the U.S. Tourists from coming in, the businessmen? Because even though we open up to them, they may not be
Well, you know, the
opening up,
restaurants,
coming.
the catering industry relied a lot on mainland tourists coming into Hong Kong.
I know.
But that's not happening now, right?
No, it doesn't matter. Or it's not that it doesn't matter. Even if we care, there's nothing we can do. We can only talk about now.
Can we survive with just local customers?
Yes. Okay. That's why we are talking about survival. Okay, that's a key word. We're talking about 4 to a table, half the capacity, okay, and then 1.5 meters apart with all these best practices, okay.
And open from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
And 6 a.m. in the morning to 12 at night for my restaurants. We all can survive, 90%. See, tourist business always accounted for 10, 20% of our total business. I'm not talking about making money. We're talking about survival. What can we do to survive? Pay our rent, pay our salary, pay our food costs, you know, and still maintain an ongoing business.
All right. Quick break. See you soon. Don't go away. Thanks for staying with us. This is Straight Talk. With me is Tommy Cheung. Tommy Cheung is the chairman of the Liberal Party, also an executive and legislative councillor, and you represent the catering industry in LegCo. Now, you know, some people, some bar owners say it's no point when you have these restrictions eased gradually every week because when you do it but you don't allow them to open completely, the landlords will say, well, now you're back in business, and therefore there's no need for us to give you subsidized rents or to cut rents or to freeze rents for a while, and you have to pay rent. Is that what's happening? I mean, have the landlords shown some kind of sympathy for the catering industry?
Unfortunately, very few landlords sympathize with my constituents. I started begging a year ago, going to individual landlords, ask them to reduce rent. That was last year, a year ago, with all these riots going on. Okay?
They didn't do it.
Some did. More did not. By February, I went begging again. I went with my 5 other colleagues that are chairmen of the catering associations, different catering associations. They went with me, all 6 of us went begging. Now from February...
You actually went to beg them?
Basically, that's my attitude. I know they have a contract. I know they don't have to do it. But I said, please help. We need your help.
Why don't they help? I mean, we're all in this together,
In
right?
February, they did. Okay, most of them did, I would say, except a few. 1 or 2 I can name, okay, that did not come in to do anything. Most of them did it till June. But July, hell broke loose, so does August. No, I don't see more than a few landlords willing to reduce rent. The majority does not reduce any rent. So whether we open for a short time, a long time, whether we open for 2 for a table, 4 for a table, landlords, if they really wanted to help, they know. But most of them, unfortunately, especially
How does
the
it
big
help the landlords if the restaurant or the bar closes and then the landlord is holding an empty premise that's not bringing in rent? How does that help that person?
They haven't seen empty premises yet. So I keep telling my trade, it's foolish to invest money now. Unless the landlord sees 9 out of 10 shops empty, they're not going to bring the rent down.
But that's not happened yet. I mean, the
That's
shops
not
are
happening now. We still have people saying, oh, it's cheaper by 20% over last year. I said it'll be cheaper by another 30% next year.
If you shut down.
And this place is still, that particular premise will still be available next year. Nobody's going to rent it. But unfortunately, with some of my trade, they think you cannot do it, I can.
They just want
So
to fight
they still
and
go,
survive.
you know, for.
You know, you mentioned that because I know the CE has also urged landlords to try and be a bit more sympathetic. Now, the CE is going to give her policy speech next month, right? The Liberal Party has proposals that I know you've put forward. I think, you know, you care about healthcare for a start, because, like, for example, now in hospitals, you want to wait for a scan, it takes months in the government hospital, right? Of course, it's expensive in private hospitals. And you know, like elderly people want to do a cataract, and you got to wait over a year for a cataract surgery, but the government helps sometimes with some subsidies. What do you want the chief executive to say in her policy speech?
Actually, last year on that particular issue, we look at what government did with cataract 8-10 years ago, where they subsidized people on the waiting list. Some they wait 2-3 years.
But that's ridiculous for a modern city like Hong Kong, a wealthy city like Hong Kong,
but
that you wait for years for a cataract
You go
surgery.
to public hospital, that's a wait, because we allow the doctors to be protectionists. They protect their trade. They keep foreign doctors from coming in, foreign nurses to come in, so that they can drive up the price, number one. And when the private practice prices are so high, you attract the public sector doctors to go. You make more money. And so you are short in private sector, you're also short in public sector, especially in the public sector. So the wait is several years. Now, basically, if you're not dying, any surgery will take you 18 months wait.
So you want the government to subsidize people to go to the private hospital?
Yes, I said give them some subsidy, like in the cataract case, and so that they don't need to wait.
And you also,
if they want to wait, they can wait, okay? But if they can afford to spend some money to seek private practice doctors, so be it. So like the cataract, that they could get things done quicker.
you also have an interesting suggestion that you know, the Hong Kong University has a hospital in Shenzhen, and you want people to be able to cross the border into Shenzhen for treatment so that there won't be such a long wait in Hong Kong.
Well,
is that doable? Because you got to cross the border.
This is a two-step approach. First step, I think the government needs to say, yes, we'll give you subsidy on certain illnesses or certain surgeries that you're on the waiting list, like with the cataract, okay? And then after they're willing to do that, so you seek private service in Hong Kong. And I say this year, to extend that, could you allow them to take the money and get, you know, surgery
Across the border?
Across the border in Shenzhen, which is run by Hong Kong U.
Right.
If you look at costs, actually, if I wait 18 months to do a surgery, take for instance CT scan that I use as an example in my Facebook. Hong Kong, you do a CT scan. Right now, I think the wait is like 6 months. Okay,
That's too long.
too long to find out what is your problem. Okay, you know that you might need surgery or you might need attention to it. But the same CT scan, if you do across the border, it probably is a third of the cost. But even if you go wait for public hospital, you don't have to pay. But government still has to pay the public hospital to do the CT scan. Now, is it actually economically, dollar-wise, does it make sense to say, okay, I'll give you an amount to do your CT scan somewhere else? Right. You don't have to wait in line. And if you allow them to go to like Shenzhen, to Hong Kong U hospital, probably with what you subsidize them, they will probably just come up with very low money and they could get the CT scan.
Now, I'm going to ask you, I've just got a few minutes left, I'm going to ask you a few personal questions. As I said at the start, you're a very controversial figure, and you often come in for a lot of criticism, including opening bars. Many years ago, when we first started talking about a minimum wage, you said that it should only be $20 an hour, and you were mocked and ridiculed, and people even printed fake $20 notes with your picture on it. Do you regret saying that at the time?
No, because I did not say that. Okay, there are a lot of things that I didn't say it. I just answered to a TVB reporter in Letchko. He said, "Oh, the government have a survey. They find out that only like 3,000 workers in the retail sector, okay, in the restaurant sector, making less than $20. So my knee-jerk reaction is, oh, in that case, $20 an hour will not be hurting the industry. They will probably be accepting."
So you don't regret saying
$20. No, I don't regret it because I did not ask for $20. I'm just looking at the $20 and say, oh, minimum wage, to me, I have always said we should not have minimum wage because we should
You
just
oppose minimum wage?
Of course. I think it should be market structured, okay? If we cannot hire people for $20 and need to hire people at $50, so be it. But not having a statutory law that says you have to give so much money.
I've got 30 seconds left. Very quickly, Regina Yip, also an ESCO member, was here last week, and I asked her whether she was worried about being sanctioned. She said not now, but if she approves Article 23, she may be sanctioned, and she's diversifying her assets in the U.S. You're also an ESCO member. Are you worried?
She's rich. I'm poor. Okay, so that's a rich...
You don't have assets in the U.S.?
I don't have asset, period, in any part of the world.
So you're not worried about being sanctioned?
I don't like to be sanctioned. It affects my family, unfortunately. But being a politician, already it's affecting them.
Now, you say you don't like sanctions, but it's affecting your family. In what way?
Even if they open an account, even if they probably doing U.S. currency, that will affect them too. But in fact, it is affecting us whether we're sanctioned or not. For the last 10, 15 years, if you have a if you were or if you are still a politician, people even doing audits now.
Your personal family is having problems
Yes.
opening bank accounts?
Yes.
In what way?
Because they know that I'm the father or the husband. It's always taking longer, and some would rather not do business with you.
So you mean your wife and your kids are having problems opening bank accounts, and some don't want to do business with you?
Yes, unfortunately.
Why is that?
It might extend to my grandchildren, 20 years from now. I don't know why, but this is how the world is doing it nowadays. With
Because you're a
politicians.
politician, it's happening.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. See you next time. Good evening.